Patrick left the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin to come to us. So that is a big coup for us. How many of you have been there to the, how many of you been there and don't like it? we has a incredible display of native plants and different ways to plant. Here's this kind of garden, here's that kind of garden. If you have not been, go, and if you haven't been in a while, go back. Early in his career, he was in the Peace Corps, volunteer in the Republic of Azerbaijan. He has a BA in biology from University of Utah, an MPA in nonprofit management from University of Utah. I met Patrick when he joined a running group that I'm in right after he moved here, and I was impressed with how friendly and kind and smart he is. So this last Saturday, the vice president of marketing and communications here is named Chris Smith, and she came to our running group, and I got to talk to her, and we have a lot in common, have worked in a lot of the same places. So I'm supposed to ask you, in Utah, how do people say Praline?
Tell the Zoomers how you.
He said praline. How do they say PECAN? Okay. Well, 50%. We have 50% alike on those two words. And I'm also, according to Chris, is it true that you go to all the Alito Bearcats games? Football, basketball, soccer, softball? Why did she tell me to ask you that? Oh, okay, so you will be. Okay, so let's give Patrick a big master.
Thank you. I'll get back at Chris for that introduction. Can you hear me okay? Great. First things first, let me just acknowledge that I know you are not the park board, as it says on this slide. I had changed a few things and put a new introductory slide up, and then I downloaded the last presentation, not the new presentation. But that's okay because the content is the same. So from this slide on forward, you won't know any different. Let me first just sort of point out, when we launched into this master planning process, we solicited a number of firms across the country. And ultimately, we selected to lead the master planning process Studio Outside, which is, Studio Outside is a great firm out of Dallas. Wanted someone with familiarity and an understanding of North Texas and sort of our geography, our ecologies, really sort of understanding what it is that makes North Texas unique. So we felt privileged to have Studio Outside lead us through the process. Bennett Partners, which is a local architectural firm. You might have seen some of Michael's work around town. They sort of led the process of developing any of the vertical architecture. Terra Design is a group out of Pittsburgh. And Terra Design, we've been working with them quite a bit on a new family garden, which I will talk to you about. And then a few other groups kind of rounded out the rest of the team. But a really, really great team. The master plan, as was mentioned, let's see, hold on, I'm trying to advance slides here. You can see that, so we're on. We think, Mary Beth. There we go. Yay! Okay, so the master plan really is a 20-year roadmap of where development will head in this garden. And it encompasses the roughly 120-acre campus that makes up the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. So I'm not going to go into, and you can't see every piece of detail on this slide, but what the point I'm trying to make with this slide is that it is fully comprehensive. And when we worked with that team, we asked them really to present us a plan that was two key things. We wanted it to be inspirational, and we wanted it to be implementable. So we didn't want plans that were so big and so grandiose that we never could afford them. We could never get around to implementing them. We wanted things that were visionary and that inspired us and inspired others, but we also wanted something that could be implemented, something that we could right out of the gate begin bringing into reality. And so we've definitely achieved that. There are a few things that are worth noting. So you'll see the rose garden here, right? This is a historic access. So the rose garden access and then this vista here, those are part of the original Hare and Hare plan. And the Hare and Hare plan is really from the late 1920s into the early 30s when we constructed this. So that's also, some of these elements are actually part of the historic registry. So we did not change those, but rather have kept them in the plan and intend to continue to preserve this vista and this vista here. There's also the Japanese garden, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this year. And the Japanese garden is another area where there is not a whole lot in terms of new additions. It's mostly preservation in that space as well. Some new areas that things that are a little bit new. So, and I'm not going to go into great detail on these in other slides, so I'm going to point them out here. But there's an education hub, as well as some of our kind of what I would call back of house service functions. That's here, and just for reference, this is I-30 up here. So there's that west lot up there that, if you've come to a plant sale or some of those things, you park there and come in the garden. We're keeping that west lot and actually increasing our educational presence in that space. The long-term intent is that school buses and those sorts of things would come and park here, and then the educational programming would happen in this space, and then throughout the garden. There is kind of a little change where the trial garden is now, if you're familiar with that space. The trial garden, in the original Hare and Hare plan, there was a water feature that was supposed to be in that space, and then another sort of structure there that is complementary and distinct to the shelter house. And then that cute little orphan gazebo that's on the other side of University. That was all part of the original access in the original plan. The two got built, this little gazebo and the shelter house. This never got completed. And so we've kind of gone back to that original plan and incorporated that in to sort of put what we're calling a rental venue, but really bring that original water feature back, and then a small sort of open air space that was in the original plan. Yes, ma'am.
Just as a point of reference, what's the compost outpost over there?
Compost outpost is sort of right in this area. Does that help you? Right? Yep. And this is, you can't see it in great detail on this, but it's a little bit of building and a fair amount of garden space. So a lot of that function stays, it's just formalizing the architecture and supporting infrastructure around it. Okay, and you can see a significant expansion of the trial garden function in this space here. And we've already begun conversations with some providers. We'll be bringing new trials to the trial garden as it exists right now this next fall, and then look to expand that program over the next several years and eventually expand it to this footprint here. All right, we talked about that corner. We talked about Japanese garden. This is a culinary garden, which I'm going to talk about briefly, and then I want to kind of get into some more detail about some of the big pieces. The culinary garden, I don't need to explain what a culinary garden is. You understand that, right? Again, going back to the original plans, the Hare and Hare, original Hare and Hare plan called for a greenhouse and then a small structure. And in subsequent years, we have added to that. And better? Do you need, I don't know, is it even on? Oh, it's on for our Zoom friends. I am so sorry to the Zoom people. Okay, I will stay right here. I won't move. Okay, culinary garden, Hare and Hare plan, two structures, a greenhouse and then a small library space. And then in subsequent years, we have added to that. That's where the cafe is now. And then there's some additional office space and other things. We call for actually returning back to the original footprint. So going back to the greenhouse, the historic greenhouse, and the library space, and removing the additional spaces that have been added on over the years. And then creating this culinary garden which is very much a seed to plate, farm to table, really talking about where we source food, how we grow food locally, and really kind of embracing urban agriculture and those sort of things. We're going to cover some other things in some slides that are coming up, but I do want to just point out that adjacent to this building is the conservatory, where we do butterflies in the garden, where we had our World of Orchids. We've got florigami pieces in there right now. We actually call for that structure to be dismantled and a much larger conservatory complex to be built down kind of adjacent to university, to really sort of, as people are going back and forth on university, to clearly indicate visually that this is a botanic garden, and to kind of bring some of the science and conservation right up to university and serve as a visual reminder of what this space is and distinguish it from the park across the street, right? Okay, I think that's everything that I wanted to touch on here. Any questions before we dive into some? I'm gonna kind of take a deeper dive into some individual spaces, but any questions sort of globally before we take a deeper dive? Yes, this, I don't know if it's a small lake or a large pond, but yes, we talked with TRWD about whether that could be in any way, shape, or form informative to their stormwater management strategy in the area. And the short answer is no. I mean, what they really need is flood control in this part of the area. So it would have to be kind of empty most of the time. And we want something that's a little bit more visually appealing and allows us to demonstrate aquatics and sort of bog plants and those sort of things. So this would be a, like I said, a large pond or a small lake. There actually is, there's a couple of waterways that move through the property. So one is the stream that kind of comes around this way, and eventually it goes right out into the Trinity through there. And then you've got this little creek that does the same thing. So we would probably have to, somehow either divert or pipe a portion of that creek underneath this pond, so that we can continue to keep the water feeding the Trinity. Okay, you asked if it was new and I went into great more. Okay, so sorry. Yes, it's new. I'll stop. All right. Any other questions before I dive into some of the detail? Seeing none, we'll try this and see if we can. There we go. All right. So one of the things, when we did 8 public engagement sessions as part of the master planning process, which meant we actually went into the community, into not just here at the garden center, but actually out into the community and talked to people about the Botanic Garden. Why are they coming here? Why are they not coming here? What do they hope to see? What do they enjoy when they come? What do they not enjoy when they come? It's the questions, it's really answers to questions like, what do you not enjoy? Why don't you come? That are really informative to us. And one of the things that we heard over and over and over again was fix the entrance. That it's a little bit abrupt. It's hard. You drive right past it before you know that you've passed it. One person said, every time I make the left-hand turn, I feel like I'm taking my life into my hands. So I make that turn every day, and I do not disagree with that statement. So what we've called for here, you can kind of see in this rendering, is a complete change in how we get guests in and out through university. I will mention that this is under the assumption that there is no traffic signal in front of the Botanic Garden entrance at university, right? Because that was the indication that we got. There's already one at Trail Drive. The city didn't want to put another one in at the garden's entrance. They felt like that was too close together. So we operated under the assumption that no traffic signal would be put in, and we devised this really great plan. And now the city is saying that they think they're going to put a traffic signal in. So this is still in play, but we might tweak it just a little bit. What you're seeing here is entrance only off of University. I'll show you the circulation in just in a minute, but this is entrance only off of University. And then instead of coming straight into the garden center like you do now, you actually kind of make a gentle left curving turn. It allows us to kind of open up that space to create a nice big monument so that you know you're arriving at a garden. It allows us to kind of bring the garden right out to University and put the plant material right on University. Again, sort of further distinguishes us from Trinity Park. And the thing that allows us to do, in addition, is it creates this sort of moment of decompression. So instead of turning and kind of straight shot, find your parking spot, mean, it's just sort of abrupt and a little bit too regimented. So this is kind of a nice decompression as you come in. We get to sort of set the tone as you enter into what we're calling a parking garden, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it just sort of, it enhances that entry experience, and it starts the experience really from the road as you come in. There is an opportunity for us after big events like concerts in the garden and those sort of things to provide for exit if we had to, really empty out the parking lot in a hurry. So what you're seeing here are some bollards that could be removed, and you could do an exit sort of thing here. But our vision was entrance and then begin your experience, and then you would actually exit on Trail Drive. Yes. So this is University, and this would be kind of the existing lane that would take you in 4 o'clock. It'd be here. There'd be the little waterfall, the frogs, and here's the Moncrief Center here. So it's that entrance right there. And then that's University.
I have a question from chat. This viewer is curious about the huge light fixtures that are at the gate right now.
Yep.
They
So that,
may be historic Fort Worth architectural items.
yep. So this is the primary entrance that you all came through, and what they're referencing is kind of the old entrance. It's right across from Trinity Park, and there are two big sort of lanterns, if you will, and those are off of the. Yes, thank you. They're off the Montgomery Ward building, and so those would not. Our intent is to not really do anything with that entrance, not to remove it or anything, because it has a little bit of historic value. But the plantings in front would be downplayed quite a bit, and then you'll see in future iterations of what's going to happen along University. So phase 1 is happening on the other side of 30 right now. And then when that's complete, really from Rosedale up to Trail Drive, we'll get a whole new treatment as well. So one of the things you'll notice in this rendering is it's a new pedestrian treatment, revolutionary, that we're proposing. It's called a sidewalk. And it would allow for pedestrian access from Trail Drive all the way down to Trinity Park and then across University. It's one of the things that is sorely missed. I mean, there is no pedestrian access on this stretch of University. And so as the next phase of University comes, we're calling for a sidewalk to be incorporated all the way down. Additional bus stops, well, really a bus stop with a sidewalk, which is again sort of a radical idea. And then I'm getting back to that entrance down there on Rock Springs Road where the lanterns are. That kind of gets played down in terms of planting. There's talk of a potential hawk signal, which is the type of signal where you hit the button if you're a pedestrian and it flashes the light so you can cross over. So that area will kind of just get a little bit different treatment, but those historic lamps don't get tossed. Sorry, I'll just answer the question and then I won't go into any more detail. Any other questions? Any other questions about the entrance? About everyone feel like you're oriented? Do you know what area we're talking about?
Is that the same spot?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. I should have just led with that. This is the same spot as the entrance is now. Okay. Well, let's see. So this is kind of this is a little bit of a schematic of what the parking would look like. So again, entrance only off of University. And here is that decompression opportunity I was talking about. You come around this parking garden, which I'm going to come back to, come around to this sort of drop-off point, and then you would park, but then as you leave, you're going to go out on Trail Drive. That's kind of the right now, that is the conceptual idea of how we would flow traffic in and out. Now, right now, I don't know if you can see these numbers, but the current parking total, its current count is 322. We have 322 spots in this lot here that's associated with this building. With expanding the parking here and a new parking garage, a 2-tiered parking garage, that takes the parking total to 942, which is we think is sufficient for where we need to be in the next 10 to 15 years. After that, we'll all be in autonomous vehicles, and they'll just sort of like bring us here. We'll get out, our cars will go somewhere else. I don't know.
What is the average attendance at concert in the
Concerts in the garden fluctuates, but it's kind of depends. Pat Green gets a little bit more than others. I think a good concert in the garden for us is nearing 4,000 people. And then yeah, and then you've got then like Lightscape, our Lightscape event last winter, which will come back again this year. And it's 80% of it is a new show. It's a different route. It's different installations. A busy night there was pushing 3,000. So there's a lot of, we're moving a lot of cars through. And then on the spring, for Japanese festival, in the spring and fall on weekends when we have festivals or big events, we're filling, those 322 are gone. Then we get really creative with where we park cars where they're not supposed to park. Those are gone. And then we have to spill over into the Dickies Arena parking. Yes, sir. I would if I remembered what it is. What? Oh, here forth. Yes, got it. I will do better, and I'll talk right into the microphone. Okay, so it's a significant parking expansion, but it is not a parking lot. It is a parking garden, and the designers have told us repeatedly they have never seen a garden, or seen a parking solution that has this many trees and shrubs, bioswales, those sorts of things. So when we built the Brit building, that parking lot is full of bioswales. It's full of, rain, we'll call them rain gardens, and a really sort of a stormwater management solution. We've increased the ecosystem services of that parking area in comparison to what it is currently. Here it's a very pretty standard straight concrete, right? There's not a whole lot in the way of bioswales. This is a parking garden. It's really an environmental solution to increasing our ability to bring vehicles in. So bioswales in between each lane, lots more tree cover. So even if we were to have to remove a few trees in this area, although our plan is to keep as many of them as we can, the number that are going in far, far, far surpasses any that are removed for this parking garden to be implemented. And then pedestrian, I guess it's worth mentioning pedestrian traffic. So this is where the bus stop is now. It's sort of just like a bus stop with some lawn around it. There's like I don't even know. When you get off the bus, I don't know where you go. There's like a bench and a road and some lawn space. There's nothing to really say, go this way, go that way. So we're proposing, one solution was to let people come in through the gate here and kind of make their way into the garden this way. And what we're now proposing actually is a bus stop right here with a crosswalk to Trinity Park so that guests could actually, visit the park or make their way in this way. But really incorporating both vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. Yes, will you keep your question very small because I have to repeat it, so. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so there's a couple of, actually, if you, it's this piece right here is actually pavers, right? So that's another way to let some of the runoff actually get down into the soil. And then there's a couple areas that have porous concrete. Porous concrete is not the magic pill that we thought it was. It gets, we don't have as much issue with it. Well, we haven't had as much of an issue. So the question was, did we think about porous concrete and pavers? Sorry, thank you. Everything I said up to that point. Okay, porous concrete, it's really not the magic pill that we thought it was a few years ago. If you're in an area that has a lot of freeze thaw, it breaks up really quickly because the water sort of permeates, gets down, freezes, and shatters it. And then if you're in an area with lots of fine dust or fine particles, it fills up, and you actually then have to go in and there are industrial vacuums to go and get some of that fine particle out so that it can continue to remain porous. So we've looked at other options, and there's several that we've kind of considered, and we're still very much in the conceptual stage with this parking garden solution. Any other questions?
Quick question. So if I'm on that last row of parking, for example, in the yellow area, and I want to walk into
Here?
the center, are you going to have
Right here. Yep, right there. That's what that line is. That's what this line right here is.
Question is about.
Oh my
paths
gosh,
through the
thank you.
parking lot.
So the question is, by the time the last question is asked, I'll remember. The question is about pedestrian paths through the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from here, it doesn't look like there's very many paths.
Yeah, it's probably hard to see. So if you were to park in this tier, this bay, there is a proposed path that cuts through here. There's a proposed path that cuts through here, all trying to get you onto this axis. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but moving everybody that axis. Yep. Great questions. Yes.
What's the timetable?
Wait, I have to repeat 2 questions. Okay.
What's the timetable for the project?
Okay, so the question is, I remembered. The question is, what is the timetable for the project? And are we talking the whole master plan or this piece here? Whole master plan is a 20-year plan, right? It'll take us about 20 years to implement all of it. This is kind of we'll go through a kind of sequencing at the very end, but this is kind of the 3rd phase of what we're looking to do. There's kind of a phase 1 project, phase 2, this is phase 3.
And will the botanical center be closed down when they part the whole thing or just parts?
So the question is, will the garden center be closed down during any of that or just parts of it? And the plan is that the garden center would stay completely functional because it actually stays. And we would build a new entrance. And then just sort of while we're constructing, right, it can stay open. Once construction's finished, we shift the entrance and then kind of come into this space and just make some improvements in this space. Did I answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Did I repeat the questions?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. We're making serious progress. Yes.
Are they still going to keep the prairie behind Brett?
Yes, yes, yes. We are definitely keeping the prairie back here. It's a bit of a Johnson grass prairie these days, but we're going to change the burn sequence. So we've done 2 prescribed fires back there. We just did one this last spring. And I actually think what we need to do is shift it to kind of a summer burn. We've been doing kind of a late winter burn, but we've got a lot of Johnson grass and other stuff in there that needs to come out. And so a summer burn is actually a better time for us to do that. So our next burn, which probably will be next year, is going to be a late summer burn. And the question was, will we keep the prairie? And so there's the answer. All right, I'm going to get on to another slide so that we can keep this moving. This is just an early conceptual rendering of what that parking garage might look like. So this is the lot this serves both Dickey's and then the Will Rogers Center, which is here. The top tier of this parking garage is on the same grade as that parking lot. So it's a way for our guests to overflow into the Dickey's lot and Dickey's to overflow into our parking garage. On the top of the Britt building, there is a green roof, which you have to have a permit and equipment to access and to look at and see. And so we've talked about bringing those, creating green roofs that are very much approachable, and guests could interact with these green roofs as they come up and down the stairs and access the parking. So these are green roof pieces that kind of bring that story a little bit closer, and there's more opportunity for interaction engagement. This is an elevator tower. It's a parking garage. It's not super attractive, but it's a really great way to put to get a lot of people into a relatively small amount of space.
I can look through this
Uh-huh.
window and see the surface.
Yes.
So we are way down. How did that happen? They were on such different elevations.
Well, because you've got you don't feel it, but it's sloping towards the river, right?
Right.
And then the question was, how do we get on? The question is, how is there such a grade change, elevation change on the site? The other thing is, you have to remember that part of that parking lot was built up because that used to be the foundry, right? And so there was all kinds of material and slag and sand and all that kind of stuff that was put into barrels. And then those barrels are fully encapsulated. And then it's wall, barrels, and then they had to kind of fill all of that. So you get a little bit more. We built that parking lot up just a little bit. And there's all that material in it. And then everything's sort of sloping down towards the river. That's how you get that. It's crazy.
Right.
Where the family garden is, which we'll talk about in a moment, it is a significant wall. Okay, any other questions about the parking garage? It's hard to make a parking garage sexy, but I think we did. Okay, this is, we are right here to orient you. So this is the Moncrief Garden Center, right? This is the space where the conservatory is now. So we're talking about taking that conservatory out. This would be a new restaurant and an additional private event space. The restaurant, one of the other things that we heard from our public engagement sessions was, don't make me walk so far to get a sandwich, right? I want to be able, if I want to be able to get food and beverage, I want to be able to get it right away. I don't want to have to walk halfway into the garden to get it. So we're bringing food and beverage to the very front. That allows us to create sort of shared kitchen space and have a kind of a higher end event space. And that allows us to keep these rooms for these sorts of events, right? Sort of community events to continue to happen here in the garden center. This is kind of a new axis. And so the entry would be here and it would be outdoors. So instead of coming in on a hot day like today, instead of coming in and then we tease you with a little bit of air conditioning and then we send you right back out into the heat, right? This is just an honest open air experience. So lots of overhead shade, but it's a way for us to kind of keep people moving through. And then it also allows us to kind of frame a viewscape. So as you are walking towards the admission kiosk, you're seeing the garden behind you and it's sort of pulling you in because you're getting to see it as you get closer and closer. We've also incorporated the green roof idea here. This would be kind of gift shop, membership, restroom, security, those sort of functions with, again, another green roof that kind of mirrors what's happening on the Britt building. And this entrance and the entrance to the Britt building are on the same axis. And the reason for that is we wanted every guest who leaves the garden to be able to look across and see the Britt building. And remember that research is a critical component to what we do here. And every guest that leaves the Britt building to be able to look across and see the garden and remember that horticulture and conservation are critically important things that we do here. So it really kind of sets those things visually as reminders and reinforces what it is that we do here. Keeping sort of, you know, the two ponds as you drive in are just beloved. And so we wanted to keep kind of that same water feature idea here. And then this, I'll just say quickly, is it's a continuation of that pollinator pathway that's between this building and the Britt building. So it's sort of continuing that native habitat with that meandering. Yes. Yeah. It's very, so the question is about the restaurant and what type of restaurant it would be. It's still very much in flux. I think it's not white linen service. It's not that type of a restaurant because we see we see a diverse crowd in terms of age, right? I mean, it's going to get more diverse here in a couple of years. So we're seeing families, young people, older people, and we're seeing a very diverse audience, sort of ethnically and otherwise. So we want to be able to provide for everybody. So I think it will be diverse and not sort of white linen, but also not just like cold case grab and go. It'd be kind of an elevated, nice, diverse. Yeah, so much improved, right? So this kind of open concept allows for greater accessibility, both in terms of entrance and exit. You're not coming into a building, crossing over thresholds, having to open doors, those sorts of things. And then you'll see, well, you would have seen, the other piece of this is a plan for a continuous loop, right? We've begun running what we call the beauty bus, which is our air-conditioned bus that takes you from the garden center to the Rose shelter house and back with several points in between that it'll stop. And the plan is to continue that so that it is eventually it just is a one-directional loop that runs all day long. So that plus moving kind of our scooter rentals, which we now have, our free wheelchairs, that sort of stuff, moving that function here as well. Kind of having a guest services piece right there to address some of our ADA issues. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the question is coffee shop and farm to table, and the answer is yes and yes. Yes. Okay, that's the shortest answer I've given, but yes. Yeah, we've talked about a coffee shop here, and then also because of that culinary garden, bringing a lot of the stuff that we produce into this restaurant space. Yep.
I have questions about the roof. It's, the question is, are they flat roofs for water conservation?
No, so these are, I mean, right now they're slanted very slightly. And the reason for that is so that if it's flat, the question is about the roof, whether it's slanted or not on the green roof. Flat green roofs are a little bit tricky to interpret and for people to actually see. And if you want to kind of tell the story of a green roof and sort of show the diversity of a green roof, you put it on just a little bit of a slant so that it's like a piece of art on an easel, right? It's an opportunity for you to sort of see it and get a better sense of what's there. Much like the roof here, I mean, this is the roof that we have on the Britt building. There is no supplemental irrigation. It gets rain and it only gets rain. And so these are, in terms of water conservation, these are high functioning landscapes that get very, very, very little water. Okay, any other questions before we move on? So this is the entry sequence. This is the first big piece that we are in the process of implementing right now. So someone asked about phasing and the timeline. So this is the family garden, which is this will be a $20 million capital campaign, and we are in the process of raising those funds as we speak. Our plan is to break ground on this in 2024. That's next year, late next year, and then open this in 2026. This is a 2-acre family garden, which I have already said, but I'm just reinforcing that again. A family garden is a space that is designed for children and all of the adults that they bring with them. So it's not just for children, but we recognize that children can't come alone. They bring adults with them. And so it's designed to incorporate all the needs of those adults as well. So parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers, whatever it might be. This is the family garden. The Fort Worth Botanic Garden has been talking about a children's garden for almost 25 years. The first iteration was, if you remember back to that first slide I showed you where that education hub is, that was the first plan, was to put a children's garden way out there. And then we realized it's a long way for little legs to go from here all the way across the site. So a few years back, we started looking at this site, and we developed a concept plan for this. And then when we did the master plan last year, we said, why don't we bring that family garden into the master plan? Let's finish that project finally, and let's incorporate it into the overall planning. So this is kind of an early concept, but it's still actually fairly true and consistent with what we're planning for at the moment. Key features are a LEED certified building here. So the Britt building is the first LEED Platinum building in Fort Worth. We will pursue the highest level of LEED certification that we can get on this building. And this is roughly 8,000 square feet. Half of it is interior space, half of it is covered open air space. So it's 8,000 square feet of roof overhead, but only half of that is inside space. You have a little library space here, which is kind of quiet drop-in area. We have a great children's library in the Britt building that you need a key card to get into. So none of you will ever see it, I'm sorry. But if we move some of those books into this space, it's a way for us to kind of rotate that collection and put some of those children's books in front of all of our guests. There is what we're calling the Laugh and Learn Gallery, and that is a space that really is intended for us to lead programming. So birthday parties, classes, that sort of stuff. It's really a space where the classroom can get messy, and we can not feel like we're on top of a rental space or something like that. This is really kind of a fun, active children's classroom. And then a little bit of office space for staff and volunteers, plenty of restrooms, as well as a kind of a dedicated parents room or lactation room, mother's lounge, whatever you want to call it, in this space. There is a sun, moon, and stars entry plaza. So this is, to orient you, I'm sorry, this is Old Garden Road, which is no longer old, right? Since we've kind of redone this, we need to come up with a new name. And New Garden Road is terrible, so it won't be that. But we need to come up with a new name here. But this is that section that has recently been converted from asphalt to stone and concrete, and we've significantly increased the plantings along that. So has anyone not seen that? Okay, well, shame. on all of you. No, it just opened not too long ago. So I would make a point to go out and see it. It used to be you'd come out of the Japanese garden on the east gate and you would sort of stumble out onto this asphalt road and wonder if you were maybe in the wrong spot. Like maybe you got behind the scenes and you don't belong here, so you would hurry. Yeah, we tore all that out. So the asphalt's gone. There's now kind of a Japanese themed, kind of rake garden themed plaza as you come into and out of the Japanese garden at the east gate. And then there's a whole lot more planting and interesting stuff going on here. So you would enter this family garden from Old Garden Road through this Sun, Moon, and Stars entry plaza. Littles get their own private entrance. So there's kind of the entrance that we all would use under a nice arbor, and there's a smaller little secret door where kids can kind of go through and eventually meet up with their grown-ups right here. This sundial has the first 4 planets that are to scale in terms of distance and size from that sun. The first one is a drain, but the other 3, are misting planets. So they emit a really fine water mist. And when the sun hits that mist, it cascades rainbows everywhere. And so that's why you see this sort of reflected in this rainbow bed here. This is actually been pushed here, and this has been pushed here, but that's okay. This is what we call the runaround. So it's a grass hill where kids can run up, roll down, lay on it, to cloud gaze, do that kind of stuff. There is a play feature area here that is a hognose snake, an American toad, and an orb weaver spider. So it's sort of the food chain story. The snake is a feature for kids to crawl in and over and on and do those sort of things. The toad is a sculptural representation. And in the orb weaver spider's web is a play structure for kids to crawl on and play on. So it starts out at ground level. In the middle, it's like 3-4 feet high. And then out on the ends, it's about 8 feet high. So the most intrepid kids can kind of get way up there. And then there is what we're calling the canyon and the creek. So this is actually recirculated treated water where kids can get in and interact with the water. We want them to be able to float things down the stream. We want them to dam it up. We want them to play in it, splash around. And so it needs to be treated water. We took the design team out to Dinosaur Valley State Park and kind of walked around and said, this is, the Paluxy is sort of what we want this to look like. Kind of a light colored stone. We want to be able to see strata and sort of, gradation. Fossils, right? So we want, and so that's very much what this area will sort of be reminiscent of. It looks like this stream comes in and then empties out into this pond, but this bridge here actually is a physical separation. So this is a natural pond. So that will be tadpoles and fish and aquatics and all that kind of stuff. But we fully anticipate kids will come in dry, get a little bit wet when they play with the rainbows, soaking wet, and they'll go out soaking wet. A little sort of kind of prairie grass meander, a little teaching pavilion with additional restrooms, this little foray over into what is now the Fuller Garden. So a little bridge across the creek, what we're calling the Whisper Thicket. And this is a seed, I'm calling it my garden, but this is a seed to plate garden where we can begin to teach children the story of food sourcing and where our food comes from. Yes.
So what is it mean for the lead?
For LEED certification? So sustainable design and building. So for example, the brick building is heated and cooled geothermally. So there are 40 wells that were sort of drilled. And so liquid is pumped down, gets cooled and warms up. The green roof is part of it. Locally sourced materials, lots of light. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways you earn credits, but it is sustainable design and sustainable construction. Other questions about the family garden? When did we say we were going to break ground on this?
Next year.
Nice, good. And what was the cost?
20 million.
This is a smart group. Okay, good. We're and I'll just tell you, I mean, we're very much in kind of the quiet fundraising stage at the moment, but we've raised over $6 million in terms of firm commitments, and we have another 8 or so million out currently, and then we'll finish up with some other gifts early next year, and then the campaign will go public next summer, and everybody will have an opportunity to contribute to the project. Just a couple of quick renderings. So that's that sun, moon, and stars entry that I talked about. Here's the little kiddos entrance. Here's the general entrance. Get a sense of what that that LEED certified building space looks like.
I
Kind of
keep having, there's some folks here on Zoom
Uh-huh.
that want to help you design the roofs.
They clearly do. Clearly they do.
And I don't know all the answers to their questions. Are you gonna do any solar panels on any of the roofs?
Not on, oh, I inadvertently hit the thing, I'm sorry. Right now, we're not planning on solar on this one because the orientation isn't great for solar. What you don't see here is that McWayne wall, that huge wall, is right behind that building. So it actually doesn't get direct sunlight for quite a while. There is conversation about solar here on this structure.
Which one is that? So,
That is
which is
This is the pavilion. That's the kind of a small pavilion space. This is inappropriate, but I'll say it anyways. I'm not an architect, I'm not a designer, so I don't know. Am I being cut off?
We're not seeing all of it.
Oh, there's not
They are
much.
not
Better.
seeing all of it.
That's much better.
There's
Now
not
they have
much.
your face.
There's not much to be seen.
They've been watching your bow tie.
The bow tie's better than that. So I'm not an architect, and 8,000 square feet, I don't really have a great sense of what that is. But I will tell you that this dog trot, right? You know, sort of this open air dog trot. This is a 4 big ass fan installation, right? So that's how I know that's roughly 4 big ass fans, which is a good space. This is 2 big ass fans. So, and big ass fan that's a brand, right? I mean, they're just these big outfits. That for some reason I can understand that. Okay, so here's that bridge across the creek, and then over here into the Whisper Thicket. Here's a look at the creek, right? So here's that sort of that very interactive feature, and what we have, it's sort of segmented into I think 6 different kind of pools, and never more than like 3 or 4 inches deep. And in some places it's only ½ inch deep, so that you can get a stroller and a wheelchair, that sort of stuff, through it without any issues. There's a whole lot more going on, but I think you get a sense of how much we've crammed into 2 acres. Okay, so that's kind of the first project, right? We will open that in 26. So once we break ground on that and we're constructing that, we'll shift and begin the next project, which is a permanent stage and band shell. If you've ever been to Concerts in the Garden, that stage is kind of right here. Every year they construct that stage. They bring it in, they build it, last concert's over, they take it apart. All that infrastructure has to be brought in at huge expense. And so we're moving it roughly 90 degrees to this area. Someone asked about the lamps from the Montgomery Ward building. That's this entrance right here, to kind of just orient you. So this is Rock Springs Road. Currently, you can just drive straight on up that way, except that there's a gate there, so you can't. But if you could, you would go that way, right? So a little bit of a parking area and a way for us to load and unload the events and the artists here, with some green room space, stage, concessions, and restrooms. And then it allows us to kind of create this little bit of an event venue that is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 concert goers. So to the earlier question about what is a big concert in the garden night, this is kind of on par with that. The other thing that's happening here is right now, this vista, which is part of that historic hair and hair vista, this is it's lawn and then very abruptly tree line, right? There's just, and we don't see a lot of guests down there. And so what we are proposing is what we're calling an herbaceous color garden, which will get a much better name. But this is kind of that same idea of meandering paths that allow you to kind of get close and interact with the plant material. These, have you ever been to the High Line in New York or seen the High Line? So that is what we would refer to as the new American meadow aesthetic. So it's lots of native plant material or well-adapted plant material, and lots of perennials. So instead of changing out annuals 3 or 4 times a year, this is perennial material, right? Mostly herbaceous, so not a lot of shrubs and trees, and really sort of highlighting lots of the great plant palette that we have here in North Texas. We're excited about this. So this would kind of be the next phase. And then after, so here's kind of a quick rendering of what it might look like. So here's the band shell, concessions, here's the kind of concert venue out in this area. And then it allows us to keep that historic vista, which we have to, because it's part of the historic registry.
So will there actually be real restaurants?
The question is, will there be real restrooms? Yes. It's sort of like the sidewalk. It's this really novel idea that we want to implement. So yes, there'll be permanent restroom facilities.
Air conditioned, right?
Yeah, it'd be miserable if it wasn't.
Air conditioned and ecologically sustainable, both of those things at once. Right?
Yes. Let's see if there's anything else before I jump into sequencing. Any questions about the first two projects, Family Garden, Herbaceous Color Garden, and Stage? And then we talked about Parking Garden, and we talked about the whole entry sequence. And that really is the third big project. So originally we were thinking that we would do Family Garden and this sort of work compound area, because this is where the begonia greenhouses are, if you're familiar with those, and kind of where our shop compound is. That's where the Family Garden will go. So we're actually building right now a brand new 20,000 square foot greenhouse facility offsite out at Rolling Hills, which is where the city has their tree farm. And that will take a lot of the begonia hybrid collection and the hybridization and production of those offsite, as well as a lot of our other production. Then that frees up some of the conservation greenhouse for the species begonia collection. And then it creates this area here for us to move sort of the shop compound, move that space over there. This happens right away, starting next year. We break ground on this late next year, open that in 26. So that's kind of the first piece. We thought we would do this next because we think the Family Garden will generate an additional 100,000 guests a year, probably more than that, and probably double our membership base. So we're approaching 8,000 member households. We think by the time we open that Family Garden, it'll be more like 15 to 16,000 member households. So we thought whether we better build a parking garden and a new entrance so that we can accommodate all that growth. And then as we shopped this in the community, people got super excited about this piece and this piece. People are really excited about the idea of a permanent band shell. We can expand the concerts in the garden, so it's not just symphony and orchestra, but we could do music and theater and performance and movies and all kinds of things there. It could really become a cultural hub and get a lot more people to experience the garden, the natural world, and the plant kingdom all in one. So 1, 2, 3. And that will be, I'll come to your question in a minute. This is 20 million. This is probably 15. This is enough to keep me up at night. Yes. Uh-huh. So great question. The question is, of all of this, how much is dedicated to native plants, right? There is 2 ways I want to answer that. One, and someone asked about accessibility. So this is that loop that I was talking about. So we kind of created this almost butterfly-shaped loop for accessibility. And then this section down here, all of this, well, minus the plant, all of this is native habitat, right? With kind of a wetland area.
Could you give the letters for the people on Zoom? They're not seeing your letters.
I could, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So section R is native habitat. X, this is the Tinsley Garden, so that's all native plant material. You've got a fair amount of native plant material here in K, and then D is fairly native heavy. The other thing to know is that we're in the process of really sort of taking a critical look at our collections. And when we were city run, we weren't actively maintaining our collections. We a lot of annual color that was changed out, those sorts of things. But now we are actively managing and databasing our collections. And we're really shifting things to a native, well-adapted. We're not going to become the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center of North Texas, but you'll start to see a lot more native cultivars, sort of native varieties, native introductions, and a lot more sort of native and well-adapted species that'll kind of be feathered throughout the garden. I mean, we could walk through, but like this part of well, they can't see, but this section of is heavy native. There's quite a bit of native that's been put throughout. And candidly, as we see more and more climate instability, right? We know that natives seem to be performing much better than introduced species in responding to that. And so it's also just sort of self-preservation. We need to incorporate more native plants or more well-adapted plants and not use as many exotics. So you'll kind of see that change happening over the next several years. Yeah.
Whatever about climate change that we are experiencing.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked a lot about. The question is climate change when we offer interpretation that or programming or anything around climate change. Signage, yeah. You'll start to see a little bit of that out there already in terms of programming and not physical signage, but some of our interpretation. And it is becoming more and more of an issue. And we have to at least be able to talk about it. We don't talk about global warming anymore because that became so politicized. That term became so politicized, right? And then people said, well, but we're having freezes in Texas, so it's not warming. It can't be that the globe is warming. Well, that's not really what we're talking about. Climate change has now also become, unfortunately, it's become fairly politicized. And so the term that we're hearing a lot more is this climate instability or climate destabilization, and hoping that becomes a little bit more of a politically neutral topic. But how do you not talk about it when today is what, day 41, over 100 degrees. And this is now the second, where I think we're right now the second hottest summer in terms of days that are 103 or above. And you've seen the 10-day forecast. Across the state, we're obliterating records. Austin is on, I think they're at day 60 something consecutive. And there's no relief in sight. So it's definitely changing, right? And we need to be able to talk about that because it impacts us. It impacts us as a cultural destination. People don't like to come to visit the garden as much when it's 106 degrees outside as they do when it's 76 degrees outside. But it also has wide-ranging impacts on our society, on our health, on the health of the environment, on the health of ecosystems. I mean, there's a much broader conversation that we need to be having. And it's not just us, and it's not just you. It's really, we have to find a way to encourage and involve the community in the conversation. And there's lots of conversations happening. We just need to kind of coalesce them and start bringing them together. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question.
That's what they've all said.
Your 8 engagement sessions, how many
Yes.
people attended? And do you have tips? Because there are some people that would be interested in helping the park and rec department with master plans and just wanting to know what lessons learned you have.
It varied. We had some of them, we had over 100. Other ones, we had 4 or 5 at one session. That session was a late ad, and we were concerned about it anyways. But we worked with a consultant, and I would work with a very good DEI consultant to help you spread the word, help you kind of issue invitations. For right or wrong, the Botanic Garden or Botanic Gardens in general sort of have a reputation as being places where wealthy white women attend. And we are so much more than that. But we had to kind of overcome that perception when we're going into communities to say, look, we want you to have an interest in this, and we want to hear what you have to say. And so we worked with people in the community to help really kind of encourage people to attend. I would give us an A for effort and a B+ for result. Yes.
We still have a conservatory.
Yes. Yeah.
What is that going to be?
Conservatory is this complex right here. G. Yeah. There'll probably be an interim where we have kind of a kind of a temporary conservatory because we have to do butterflies in the garden every other year. Otherwise, people will lose their minds. So we'll make sure that we're able to do that. Yes, and then yes.
I've had a couple questions from chat about when are you gonna let us know that you need volunteers? How many volunteers?
Got it. We need volunteers. No, I think especially now that the pandemic for the most part is in the rearview mirror. Our volunteer base has been growing, but we are always in need of more volunteers. It's 120 acres that we maintain. We have a fairly lean staff. They're brilliant, dedicated people. But I would strongly encourage you, if you want to learn, if you want to have great social opportunities, if you want to be outdoors, if you want to sort of see nature up close and personal, I would definitely reach out. There's two individuals, Ryan and Molly, those are two individuals you could connect with. They run our volunteer department and they would welcome the help.
And
Yes.
how would we find their contact info on
Yep.
the website?
Yeah, if you just go to fwbg.org, you'll be able to connect up with them really quickly.
We'll have that discussion when we find out what you're going to volunteer.
And I'll back you up and I'll twist any arm that needs to be twisted to make sure. That yeah. So Rose Garden again is conservation preservation, right? We've put quite a bit of money into the infrastructure of the Rose Garden the last 2 years. So the cascades are working again. So the water, if you ever saw it in the last 10 years running, that was because someone was standing at the top with the hose. And then the water fountain is running now. So we've had to replace all the piping. We've replaced quite a bit of the stonework, both at the shelter house and coming down the cascades. Because it's historic, we can't tear it out and put new in. We actually go stone by stone, take the stone out, put it back in, that sort of thing. Lion, yes, the lion is working. Yeah, the lion's definitely working. Someone at the city was asking if the frogs, when were the frogs going to spit again? The frogs never spit, but the lion does. So the lion is now spitting. Yeah.
That's a different part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Baroque.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Yeah. So ignore all of this. Not really. But so think of this as completion in 26. This is probably completion in 27 or 28. Sorry, L is complete. Thank you. And the question is completion dates. L would be completion in 26. And then this JI would be completion kind of 27, 28. And then moving into this big ECB, this is a much larger campaign, very complex. This is probably 7 to 10 years out. Does that answer the question? Good. Any other question? Yes. That's okay. No, it's fine. We didn't put a limit on the number of questions. I should have, but I didn't. Yeah. No, right now there's no plans for charging for parking outside of special events. So we do, like for lightscape and other things, we do charge for parking, but right now it's just part of the general admission cost. No, we just increased rates this last year. We put in kind of a quasi-dynamic pricing structure. So if you buy your ticket in advance online, there was actually no increase. But if you show up at the front desk on a busy day, you pay a little bit more than you would if you showed up at the front desk on a not so busy day. Yes, you're welcome.
I was also interested in the recent parking garage that have the roof garden.
Yes.
Are you doing like different types of things?
Yes. Yeah, so the question is on those display living roofs, those green roofs, would there be kind of different strategies or different plantings? And yes, not drastically different, but kind of highlighting different things that can be done with. Yeah. In sort of different sort of microclimates or sort of micro regions. Yeah. Yes.
Go.
Compost outpost and veggie garden. So veggie garden becomes really a lot of this M. That's the, becomes the culinary garden. Compost outpost actually really stays kind of where it is in this, is an O, in that O section. It just, again, that's not all building. That's building plus garden plus composting, all those sort of things. Other questions?
Again, there's some questions about ADA accessibility and,
Yeah.
and so I guess we just build that in now. But,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of, I mean, again, this accessible loop so that anyone can, anyone who wants to can see every aspect of the garden. Part of it is, I mean, there's several areas in the garden right now that we're going back and making adjustments or changes or kind of fine tuning so that they're more accessible. In addition to all the private dollars that we raise, there's also a $17 million commitment from the city of Fort Worth to address deferred maintenance issues. So I think in the 2022 bond, we all committed to 7 million, I think, of that 17 million coming to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. And we're working on some of those projects. We've addressed some in the past. There'll probably be another bond in the next couple of years to finish out the remainder of that 17 million. And a lot of that is actually accessibility, like replacing loose stones, replacing steps with ramps, those kinds of things. Great. Any other? Good. No more questions. Let me just say, first, we're very excited about this, and we're excited about the opportunity. It's only been 2.5 years since we merged the Botanical Research Institute of Texas and the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. And it's been pretty remarkable, the amount of growth that we've seen. Last year, we welcomed 365,000 guests to the Botanic Garden. The year prior was not quite 250,000. So we're experiencing rapid growth, rapid interest in what we're doing. But we're also wanting to remain true to our core and to our mission and to our DNA, which is plant conservation, which is research, which is education and horticulture. And so it's always a balancing act. With growth comes more opportunities to teach and to introduce people to the quiet joys of nature. But then with growth also comes lots more people and the challenge of having more people in your space and those sorts of things. So we are very excited about it. We hope you're excited too. We need volunteers. Did we mention that? Any other questions? Great. Oh, you got it in. Yes. Yeah, it's great. So the question is, who else is getting to hear about this? So because this is city property, this went through our board here at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. It went before the Parks Board, then went to City Council. So City Council got to see it. And then we've been kind of taking it on the road for the last year or so to groups like this and to others, the Garden Club, et cetera. And you can find out information about it on our website, and you'll be hearing more about the Family Garden campaign as that really starts to ramp up and we continue to create awareness around that. Yeah, you're welcome. But quickly, show of hands, who came to Lightscape last year? And who will be attending Lightscape this year? That is correct. Okay, good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Got to give him his flash drives back. Listening to this in person, you guys, I don't know about you, but wow. I used to work at a private school, and this many millions, you are working really hard. You are working very hard. And we live in a town where if you're asking for $20 million, some of the companies that will and foundations that will provide that money, this is me talking, not Patrick, remember, he didn't say this, happen to be in the energy business. So you also have to walk a tightrope. But thank you very much. We look forward to it. We look forward to it. Okay, I'm